The basis of the initial research was telling me a story about a time when you felt afraid at work. What happened? What did you do? What did others do? What was the impact of that on you? And what did it mean to you? And then tell me a story about a time when you felt loved at work.
Today, I'm excited to continue our AME podcast series by welcoming Renée Smith back to the show. Now, if Renee's name sounds familiar, it should, because Renée first came onto the podcast back in episode 191. So definitely go back and check that one out. Now, Renée is a director of organization development services for the state of Washington. Now, during the show, Renée really focuses on how to make work more human. In fact, during our conversation, Renée asked me to comment on the topic we were exploring, which led to me sharing a pretty personal story from my childhood. In fact, the situation I talk about was one of the biggest turning points of my young life. So hopefully that story resonates with someone out there. Now, show notes for this particular episode can be found over at gembapodcast.com. Just look for episode 241. Again, gembapodcast.com, and look for episode 241. Okay, enough from me. Let's get to the show. All right, Renée. Well, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Ron. It's so good to be here. So good to see you.
Yeah. So AME. So this is your first time to AME?
Yes, exactly. I have not been to an AME conference before, but really excited to be here this week.
Yeah.
To meet so many people, see so many people like you face to face for the first time.
Yeah, right.
And then
I know.
Meeting so many other people who I know are on this lean journey, and each in their own different places in their organizations, and it's really inspiring.
Yeah. So you were on the show back in episode 191 almost a year ago.
Yeah.
Well, by the time this episode releases, it'll really be almost exactly a year ago, November 2017.
Crazy,
So cool. So let's just jump in. It's gonna, for the folks listening here to the podcast, the big keynote. It's about the Unleash, so it's make it a little noisy, but we're just going to fight through it. Okay,
it may get loud.
Yeah, make it loud, but we're good with these headphones. So, all right. Well, let's start. Do you have a quote that you want to share?
You know, the thing that I'm thinking a lot about lately, and it's really been with me from the beginning in this work that I've been doing with the state of Washington, is that, you know, I've never just been interested in process improvement. It's important, and I'm interested in that, but it's never just been about that. Mm-hmm. It's always been about more. It's been about how can we change an entire system so that becomes a way of life, and so that we create a completely different way of working in government.
Yeah.
And that really dovetails with this definition of lean. You know, there's always the big discussion about what is lean, you know, and I don't want to get too far into that, but I do want to offer that, you know, embracing this bigger question about, you know, being interested in changing a system means that the definition of lean that my friend Jim Benson offered, which is that lean is a human-centered philosophy of work, has been completely catalyzing in this work that we're doing, and like lifts up our sights and gives us a whole other set of questions and challenges and opportunities to explore. And so that's what we've been working on, and some great things have been happening.
Now, I want everyone to go back and listen to episode 191 after this, but in case folks didn't hear that one, Renée, tell us a little bit about your background, maybe how you first got introduced to continuous improvement, and then, you know, for the folks who did listen to that episode back in November, catch us up, because some big things have been happening in Renée's life, I think, over the last year.
Yeah, and in the state of Washington, so excited for what we're up to. So my background's organization development by training, and I was in private practice with that, and worked at the University of Washington doing organization development work with the administrative side of the house. And part of that work was continuous improvement work there. That took me to Olympia, to the Enterprise Services Organization, which is basically the organization, the central services functions that run the business of government.
Okay.
And so I worked there at a time when we were really embracing lean as a state enterprise, and that's 7 years ago, and that's been growing ever since, and particularly under Governor Jay Inslee and his administration. He's just embraced this as his management system. And we have been on an amazing going through an amazing process of cultivating this culture of continuous improvement as a state government.
So how do we get every state doing this? Let's just start with an easy question,
you know? That's a good question, and so many states are.
I know there's a ton out there that are.
I hear from people all the time, people from Illinois who are here. We're working with the state of Pennsylvania, and have colleagues there who are at it. Ohio, and I mean, you could go on Arizona.
Connecticut.
There are many states are.
Yep.
The thing is that government isn't good about telling its own story.
Yeah.
So there are so many wonderful things happening in government, not only at the state level, but county and city governments. There's just beautiful stories happening.
Yeah, we've been working with the city of Austin in Texas. They're doing some great work.
Yeah, exactly. There's amazing
city
work
of Grand
happening.
Rapids.
Yes.
Shout out to those guys. Yeah.
So it's happening.
Yeah.
It's just sort of the best untold story that is out there. So.
Yeah. So what's been the big change, since last time we talked?
And I guess I should set a little bit of context maybe. So back in 191, in that episode, the thing that I shared was that I had this curiosity. I had a conversation with my leader, Chris Liu, director of our agency at the time, and asked him about what was the most important job of a leader. And he said to eliminate fear from the workplace. And from that comment from him came sort of like, that's the thing. And I grabbed onto that and pondered that and came to the conclusion that when fear goes out, something takes its place. And that thing is love, right?
Yeah.
And so we talked about that last time about that big idea.
Yeah.
And then my pursuit of understanding what happens when people are afraid at work and what happens when people feel loved at work.
Yeah.
And I did some primary research on that, 50 research interviews.
Yeah.
And then talk to people everywhere I go.
Yeah.
and from that has come a lot of clarity about the incredible cost, the high toll that fear takes in the workplace, and all the different ways that it prevents us from doing the kinds of things that we're trying to do in a lean management system, and the incredible benefit and potential and unleashing of humanity and unleashing of all the good things that happen when people feel loved.
Yeah.
And loved, it's a provocative word.
Yeah.
It's purposefully provocative, and it's kind of disruptive. But then it opens up a conversation to talk about, what do you mean by love, and what does that actually look like at work? So, it can be a lot of different things to people, and people fill in the word that they're most comfortable with. Sometimes it's belonging, care, trust, respect, inclusion, empathy, kindness, all those good things. But when we fundamentally begin from that spot, people live in, they bring it, they bring their best.
Yeah.
They settle in and calm down. They're not anxious, and their brains function better, and they're able to do the things that we hope that they can do and that they want to do.
Yeah.
People want to show up every day and contribute. Right?
Yeah.
So that was the big idea, and I began to share and talk and write about that in our own government and kind of beyond. And from that has come momentum.
Yeah.
And I want to talk a little bit about the growing community that has come out of that. And then throughout the course of this year, as that community has grown and the work with state leaders has grown, now the opportunity to move from enterprise services to the governor's Results Washington office and
so you're
focus on
in the governor's office now.
And to focus on a human workplace full time.
Wow.
Yeah. So my work now is directing workplace transformation to help ignite a change in the way work happens and to have it be more human-centered. So, which really, back to that definition, is really the core of what Lean is all about.
So, what's the day in a life of Renée look like?
Well, because I'm pretty new and I just made the transition about a month ago, so that day is still getting figured out. But some of it is writing. And oftentimes I wake up really early and write. The ideas will come in, and I'll be chewing on something, and so I'll spend maybe an hour writing.
And who are you sharing this writing with then?
So I have a blog on makeworkmorehuman.com, which is part of our state blog, and that will be moving and becoming part of the Results Washington website.
Okay.
We're just in the transition piece of that now. And
I hear applause. I think
here they come.
The posse's about to come.
But there's writing and kind of thinking about the leaders and teams that I'm working with and how to best reach them.
Okay.
And so then, after I make my commute down to Olympia from Tacoma, it's engaging in creating products and tools and methods to developing resources to support organizations on there that want to embrace this idea of being human-centered.
Yeah.
And so, I'm meeting with leaders, I'm teaching and speaking, collaborating with my colleagues in Results Washington. There's a lot of connected work going on. People working on different kinds of problems, results teams that are taking on big problems in government, and helping to bring government leaders together all over government to solve problems that Washingtonians care about.
Yeah.
And the human-centered piece is a part of that. I have a colleague, Jessica Dang, who is really bringing the leadership on the channel of human-centered design and how, from a customer perspective, we approach the work, whether it's a form or a process or, however we engage customers, that we really think about that with empathy and design our work in government to meet their needs.
Yeah.
So there's, lots of collaborating going on, and then just working with agencies and teams and leaders to help them become more human-centered.
So the question I'm always fascinated with when I'm talking to folks who work in the government is, leadership always changes in a normal company. Leadership changes, right? You get a new manager or a new CEO or whatever, and it can be disruptive. But it's a certainty in government that eventually leadership will change. Right? So how do you deal with that? As far as, you might have a new governor. You will have a new governor eventually.
Eventually. There's a rhythm to government, that's for sure. And I think, for me anyway, and I think from the colleagues that I work with, it kind of laser focuses you, because you do realize that as your leaders, as a leader chooses to go on, or as something changes, that your time is limited, and so it does focus you in on realizing that we've got only a small amount of time to do this work, and we've got to get busy and dig in and really do it. And so we focus on that. We talk about that, and it's a big question of how far can we get far enough, fast enough to embed this in government, and to make help people understand the value and to help it continue. Our lean journey, survived a transition, if you will. Originally, there was an initial beginning in the previous administration, and then with the new administration coming in years ago, when Governor Inslee came into office, he took that, embraced it, ran with it, really made it his own, and expanded it in powerful and impactful ways.
Well, the beautiful thing about continuous improvement is it really shouldn't matter if you're,
right.
Republican, Democrat, Independent, doesn't matter. Everyone should want to make things better, right?
That's
and
right.
I think we can agree that better is better, right?
That's right. It should be the great thing that brings us, or one of the opportunities we certainly have to come together.
To unite, really, So, all right. Well, talk about some of the continuing research that you guys are doing and what you're learning as part of that research.
So when I think about, there's a lot of avenues of research, there's a lot of questions. So the thing that's been beautiful about this initial question of what happens when we feel afraid at work or when we feel loved at work, and the answers that come from that is, there's this quote, and I can't remember who it's from, but this quote that says, "Always a beautiful answer that asks a more beautiful question." And it's like, this work is full of beautiful next questions.
Say that again.
Always a beautiful answer that asks a more beautiful question.
Wow.
Yeah. And, every time we do a piece of research or work with someone and get another answer and another piece of the story, another set of insights, it's like blows the roof off of the next beautiful kinds of questions to explore. So, but it's it's been really profound, and so we could try it, or I think we should try it, Ron. Okay. So the basis of the initial research was telling me a story about a time when you felt afraid at work. What happened? What did you do? What did others do? What was the impact of that on you? And what did it mean to you? And then tell me a story about a time when you felt loved at work. And love could mean anything, however you want to define love. Love could be belonging, care, trust, respect, empathy, inclusion, any of the good stuff. And what did that mean? What happened? And what was the impact? And what did it mean to you? So I think it would be awesome for turn the tables.
I'm interviewing you here. What's going on here?
Yeah, I think it'd be awesome for you to share a story about a time when you felt maybe afraid at work and loved at work. Or
actually, I'll think about work here, but the thing that immediately popped in my mind is, it's a story I'm not sure if I've shared it. I know I haven't shared it on the podcast, but I think I've actually blogged about it before. But it's not a work thing. It was a thing from my childhood, actually. Something that, a lot of people probably don't know is that I had a really bad anxiety problem as a young man. I think 7th grade was like a particularly hard year for me. I just had like I said, just tons of anxiety. I used to have to ride the bus for like an hour to school.
Ooh.
And I still have a terrible motion sickness problem. You know, I got to sit in the front seat if I'm not driving, you know, one of those things. Yeah. So, but the anxiety, you know, amplified the problem. So I got onto the school bus and I sat in the front seat behind the bus driver, same place. And it was to the point where every day I would get on and the bus driver, bless her heart, really sweet lady, would hand me a bag because she knew I was going to throw up. Oh. So I just grabbed the bag and I sat down and, you know, one thing led to another and I would every day throw up. Just racked with anxiety.
How traumatic.
Yeah. And so it was pretty awful. You know, kids obviously didn't want to be around me, you know, because the 7th grader up there.
A barfing kid.
Yeah. And make matters more challenging, the bus was 7th grade all the way through high school. Oh. So, you know, I was the bottom of the totem pole already, you know, here are all these big high school kids. So anyhow, one day I got to the bus stop and I'm standing there by myself, you know, and holding my bag and whatnot. And my neighbor, his name was Jeff Marker. And he was, I believe, in an 11th grade at the time, big stud high school quarterback, cheerleader girlfriend, you know, he had it all, right? Yeah, this guy, you know, was kind of my idol, but I wouldn't really ever dare talk to him because it was, you know, Jeff Marker, right? You know, who am I? So I'm standing there and Jeff walks up to me and he says, hey, why don't you sit with me today on the bus? And I'm like, huh? And then I thought to myself, wait a minute, Jeff sits by himself in the back seat, you know, that's where the cool kids sit, right? In the back.
Right.
I'm like, okay, you can't say no, right? You know, so I was like, okay. So I get on and I remember the lady, the bus driver, she's still handing me my bag. She wasn't sure. So I kind of grabbed the bag and I'm holding on, man, this is going to be bad. So we sit in the back seat. And next thing you know, he starts chatting me up, you know, about football and different stuff and sports and whatnot. And we're just having a decent chat. And all of a sudden I look up and we're pulling up to the high school, which was the first stop. It was, you know, my school was 5 minutes away. We pull up to the high school and I thought to myself, I didn't throw up. I'm okay. You know, and I'm like, he's like, hey, have a good day, whatever it was. And from that day on, you know, we continued to sit together on the bus and we became friends, you know, as good as friends could be, 7th grade, 11th grade kind of, but we play basketball and kind of hang out on the weekends or whatever. And so I later found out in life from my mom that she actually went over and talked to Jeff's mom about my problem and asked, you know, her if Jeff would, you know, whatever. And so, yeah, he was put up to it, but he still did it, and he did it very well. Like, I had no idea, you know, that he didn't mean it or anything like that. And I wouldn't say he didn't mean it, but he acted on it. Right. But I tell that story because it really changed my life. Yeah. You know, in 7th grade, like I never threw up again, ever, on the bus for the rest of my life. Wow. And so that morning, you know, was like a huge, I don't know, awakening for me. Yeah. And, you know, so I thanked Jeff over the years, and heck, I don't know, I've lost touch with him now, so maybe we'll find him and he can listen to this podcast so he knows how.
Hey, Jeff.
Yeah, hey, Jeff. He really impacted me, but I like to tell that story because I like to tell folks to never underestimate, you know, how powerful a single contact can be.
That's right.
You know?
Yes. A single act of kindness, right?
Is one act of kindness. You just don't know. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. Exactly.
So I don't know. So that I don't know if that kind of fits in with what you're talking about here.
I think it's a beautiful illustration. So, you know, if we think of that as sort of, first of all, thank you for sharing that story. Yeah. It's inspiring, and I'm sure that others listening to it are totally gripped by it. And we can relate. We've all had those experiences where we've needed something like that, right? And then when people have helped, it changes our lives. And when we've suffered and not, then, you know, we also see the impact of that on people. But what I'm thinking about is how this is almost like a metaphor, or like an illustration for what can happen in organizations. So if you think about the moms are like the leaders in the organization, in the system, right? And those moms and did what leaders should do is they looked down into the system, they looked at the people under their charge and said, oh, your mom said, I got a concern. I love my son, obviously, and I need to intervene on his behalf. And so those leaders had a conversation, and made the right thing happen, and that changed her life. And they, she asked for compassion to happen. She asked for an act of empathy and kindness. I think our workplaces are full of those kinds of opportunities. We have people who are struggling. They're in work that's really hard, like really painful. I had someone in a gathering we had last Friday who works for the Department of Social and Health Services, and we were talking and kind of using some poetry actually to inspire public service and to just pause for a moment and reflect and kind of connect around our work. And she, as she described her work, it was that every day she faces how ugly and horrible human beings can be to each other. Like, that's her job, is to have to look at that on behalf of all the rest of us, right? We don't have to do that because she's doing her job every day to like deal with when people are being cruel to other people. And like that takes a toll on a human being. And so for her to come to these gatherings that we're having, like, she's getting fed and connected and supported and is also getting that in her workplace. And, so there's that going on where people face tough work and they need support. Or they're different. They're different background, different race, different religion, different present differently, LGBTQ, whatever. They're different, but they've got contributions to bring. And we need leaders who create the context for making that happen. Creating inclusion and belonging and care, so that people can bring it. Because we don't just need just the people that look like us to bring it, or that sound like us, or whatever. We need all the people to bring
humanity.
It. We need humanity. And humanity wants to bring it. So.
No, it's beautiful. So let's say someone's listening to this right now. I was going to say in the government, but I don't think it's definitely not just a government thing, right? This is a world thing. Like, what can leaders do, Renee, to kind of just improve the way they're thinking about relationships, love, even?
And I will say that it's a world thing now more than ever, isn't it?
For sure.
Because we're recording this right after the Pittsburgh synagogue massacres and the two African American people who were killed and the bombs. All of that is happening. That's the context that we're working in, and that doesn't go away when people walk through the doors. It's present with us. So what can leaders do? Well, the research that I've done shows that it isn't complicated. On one level, it's not complicated. That what people need is very simple. They need to be seen. They need to be acknowledged. They want say hello. They want you to make eye contact with me when you walk in the morning and know my name. Take a minute to find out a little bit about me, and remember to ask about how my kid's baseball game went. It's those little acts of kindness and respect. It's making room for my opinion at the table, or to make sure to not just hear the voices in a meeting that are the dominant voices, but to kind of clear the way so that other voices can join the conversation. That's all part of it too. So leaders can keep their word. It's the little tiny simple day-to-day acts like that. I'm trying to think of some of the other things that come out of the research. It's also leaders valuing the health and the culture of the whole organization over perhaps the contribution of one person that might also be tearing down that culture.
So how do you deal with that? Because obviously, if you have someone who's not on board with the ways of the company, or perhaps they're even just spreading more ill than joy. Like, how do you deal with that?
The dilemma, I think, is when that person is your supposed biggest contributor. Right?
They're
the subject matter, they're superstar. And yet, what it's hard for a leader to see is the impact, the negative impact that person's happening. We can see, let's say it's somebody in sales, you can see the bottom line of what they're contributing, but you can't see the way they're draining the productivity of everyone else. The way they're undermining culture and all the cost of that. And so leaders have to, first of all, find ways to tap into that. They've got to find and cultivate relationships with people that will tell them the truth about what's really going on. And they've got to pursue it. They've got to want to know the truth about what's happening, and then be willing to act. And that's a dicey thing, because, being willing to act when we say to be, we want to be human-centered and loving, that doesn't mean just letting people get away with whatever, right? But it also doesn't mean being brutal when we have to make a hard decision.
Right.
It's handling those interactions with compassion and respect, but it's also making the decision that cares for all the humans, not just for the one in front of you.
Yeah. Yeah, because, I think about my mom, she's this incredible act of love and kindness and compassion and whatnot. But, later that day, I probably came home and, was doing something I shouldn't have, and I got corrected, right? I mean, that's love, right?
Exactly.
Accountability sometimes, correction.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what's the difference between, like, would you say love and, like, friendship?
Yeah.
Because, like what the parents would say, I'm not your friend, I'm your mom, or something like that, right?
So there's this definition of love that I have landed on right now that has to do with having this limbic resonance, or this limbic, it's about attachment. And, this limbic center in our brain that allows us to connect with each other on a deep level, and then it creates this sense of connection and regard and care.
Yeah.
And then that manifests then in a lot of different ways. And, relationship to relationship, it looks different.
Yeah.
So parent to child relationship is one kind of has its own expressions of love. Spousal or partner relationships has another expression. Friends have another expression. Coworkers have another expression. The person that you cross paths with in the crosswalk on the street, there's another expression of love there. It's like it's all one.
It's just a smile, hello.
But that is an expression, of love for humanity. For that person's humanity.
Yeah.
And there's that connection and attachment that we have with each other. We need each other to be neurophysiologically stable. If we don't have that, we're not well. That's why solitary confinement is so damaging, right? So we need each other.
Something I've thought a lot about, I have kids, and thinking about even Get Academy in our business, 15 years from now, with say millennials and all the rest of it rising up into the workforce. And like, I do worry, like even with my own kids, like my daughters have cell phones, and I can't remember the last time I've actually seen them place the phone to their ear and talk into it.
Yeah.
Like, what do you see happening with the next generation coming up as it relates to this topic, and how they're interacting with one another in a far different way than what we are? Because we're totally different. We'll pick up the phone and call one another.
Yeah.
I wouldn't text you.
Although you probably, you might too. I might. So that we're all kind of drifting that way, and I'm not sure, but the pendulum swing back and forth, and I don't think that this pendulum is going to swing and fall off the cliff.
Yeah.
But I think that it's headed out there, and we're going to hit something that is going to pull us back, and perhaps we're already in that moment. Yeah. I think that this moment is about finding our way back to herd humanity. I think that that's what we're in the middle of discovering, and how technology will play in. I don't know. I'm not a tech person. I'm not oriented toward that. But I do know that we tend to seek and find what we need when we need it. And I have hope that the pull of our humanity toward each other is stronger than our inhumanity.
For sure.
So
that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So what are some final tips that you want to leave with folks, Renee, as far as like something they can do today? What can they do today? They're listening right now.
Yeah.
They're in their car, they're on the treadmill, I don't know where they're at.
Yeah.
That's one thing they can do today.
So part of the challenge of learning to put love in action is that there's no magic formula. There's some principles, there's the kinds of things that we talked about. There's some the big idea, but then every day, each of us is going to encounter challenges. We're going to encounter these moments where we are faced with a choice, and that choice will ultimately be: will we put fear in action or love in action? Will we be indifferent or will we be caring? And part of what helps is just heightening our awareness that that's what we're doing. And seeing those moments as key choices that we have to make. I can't give anybody a list of here's the 10 things to do, when this happens, do that.
Yeah.
But instead, we've got to continually sensitize ourselves to the fact that those choices are happening and that they matter.
Yeah.
They matter to just people to people.
Yeah.
It matters because it's the right thing to do to other people.
Yeah.
But it also matters in the sense of being good for business,
Yeah.
And I don't want to be instrumental about this or, think of it as like we only do this so we get good business results. But the good news is that being good to people, being kind, loving, caring, treating people well is good for business.
Yeah.
Because people will bring their very best when we do that. So I think my challenge to people is to think, about the challenge that you might be facing today.
Yeah.
It might be, I got a new employee coming on my team. How am I going to handle that? Am I going to be too busy, to make time to sit down and have a cup of coffee, learn about them, help them make sure they've got the resources they need to get going, check in with them a few days later. That might be one thing. Maybe somebody on my team made a really big mistake. Maybe we got some kind of, problem that happened and we've got to work our way through that. They've got to correct it or whatever. Am I going to blow up at them? Am I going to, take them to task? Or am I going to let them know that, as my friend Rick Garza did at the Liquor and Cannabis Board, am I going to let my team member know that we're here for you, we're family, and we're going to support you,
Or pull a Toyota card and say, what did you learn?
Yes, exactly. There you go. And then, and then there's these, learning opportunities with team members and how we're going to ask questions and invest in their learning, or are we just going to tell them what to do and get off to the, onto the next thing.
Awesome.
So all kinds of, little moments every day where we can.
One thing that I have always appreciated, the old classic, How to Win Friends and Influence People with Dale Carnegie.
Yes.
Smile.
Yes.
Just smile. Go to the checkout line at the grocery store, just smile and say thank you and look them in the eye,
Yeah.
I mean, just little things like that I find, make me feel better at least, and hopefully it makes that person feel a little bit better, even if for that moment.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think one of the things that I would want to end with saying is that I really believe that leadership is love in action. It's putting love in action. And that the higher up you go on the organizational chart as a leader, the greater your capacity and your ability to love has to be. And so wherever you are, in your span, is your opportunity for love, and the higher up you go, the more love. And that the width of love, if you will, if you think about picturing an org chart, all the boxes underneath you, all those direct reports, caring about each of those human beings and understanding and knowing who they are, and then down into those organizations, and each of those people are people that also need us to connect with them and to feel that they have a relationship and that they're cared about from leadership up and from the organization. And then there's a complexity in the mess of creating a loving environment when the system, if you will, when there's complex challenges. How do I, deal with, a process challenge in one area that's going to impact another area, or can't even make up, the kinds of complex challenges that we face, but there's complexity. And so how do we, as leaders, handle that complexity in a way that cares for all of the human beings of the system? So. I've used that system word a lot, but I'd just like to think of the whole, right? Think of the whole, the bigger picture.
How can folks connect with you, Renee?
So a couple ways. My email is renee.smith@gov.wa.gov. And through the website, I think, through makeworkmorehuman.com is another good way. They can sign up for the blog there and learn more about what we're doing.
And when you move the blog into the thing, will that URL still work? Or
we haven't decided yet. I think so.
Okay.
I think that it will probably direct back through.
Okay, well, we'll put this in the show notes. So gambapodcast.com. I don't have any idea what the number is going to be for this episode. So look for Renee Smith. It'll be towards the top. Gambapodcast.com, and we'll link to everything. Renee, thank you. Maybe we'll get another update next year, AME, something like that. I don't know. Yeah. So I think it's fun to stay in touch.
Yeah, it is. I want to say, too, one of the things that we have, so I'm here this week, next week in the state of Washington, to give you a flavor of what's happening in government. Next week, we will have, on November 6th and 7th, in our convention center in Tacoma, our Washington State Government Lean Transformation Conference, 7th annual. there will be more than 2,000 public servants for 2 days learning about lean and continuous improvement.
AME.
Yeah. I think we might have more. Yeah. And so, and there's people coming from other parts of the country to join in that, and from all levels of government. Really good things are happening in government. Government cares.
Yeah.
And we're working to make it better. So
thank you so much for everything you're doing.
Hey, thank you. Thanks
all
for
right.
talking today.
Okay, take care.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Gemba Academy podcast. Now, we invite you to take a no-strings-attached, fully functional test drive of GembaAcademy.com. Gain immediate access to more than 1,000 Lean and Six Sigma learning resources, all free of charge, at GembaAcademy.com.